But tonight we're very pleased to have somebody I followed since 2004 when she swam to Antarctica, Lynne Cox. She's in the International Swimming Hall of Fame. There's absolutely not enough time to go over her swimming exploits here. If you would like to take a look, please, I invite you. Keep in mind, I'm just going to do some bullet points here, but keep in mind, as most of you know, that she did all these swims sans wetsuit, no wetsuit, just cap, goggles, and swimsuit, and her ability. As a teen, she's twice set the record for English Channel crossing for both women and men. She crossed the Strait of Magellan, the Cook Strait in New Zealand, and she was the first swimmer to swim around the Cape of Good Hope. Among her many feats, perhaps the most impressive was 5 miles through 38-degree waters of Antarctica. Of course, the basis for her 2004 book, Swimming to Antarctica. But perhaps her most thawing swim happened in the late 80s when she swam 2 hours through the Bering Straits, and her feat was toasted not only by U.S. President Ronald Reagan, but also Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev at the INF Missile Treaty in 1987. So when you have two great leaders saying things about you like this, you're a pretty big deal, isn't it? She's written 6, now 7 books, including tonight's Tales of Al, the water rescue dog, the making of a super athlete. It's a wonderful book. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It'll probably make you want to buy a Newfoundland. So please welcome Lynne Cox. Lynne is a hero of all of ours, but I'm bringing out Beth Moore to talk just briefly about Lynne to give her a little bit more of a proper introduction. So go ahead, Beth.
I've known Lynne for over 50 years, and if I'm not mistaken, there's only one person, Kate, who's known her a little bit longer. So we shared high school, and then from there on. And picture running down to Seal Beach and seeing this person in that water without her wetsuit and swimming back and forth. And the only thing that I really need to say is, if you've had a chance to read her books, and I really encourage you to do so, the depth of her love for her friends and the compassion, and just that she can fit that in even to the level that she does is only surpassed by the depths of the oceans that you swim in, and she's just it makes me cry to just talk about how much she cares about us. And so picture that, and she does that with all the sea creatures and the environment in the world. She's a gift. I hope for all of you that you have a friend like this in your lives, because it's life-changing, it's a blessing, and I've been blessed in that way. So thank you all for being here. Those who've come, part of the dog rescues and everything that I've reached out to make sure people came. This is a very unique book, and I encourage you to get it, read it, purchase it here from Chaucer's if you can, and just thank you for being here tonight. All right. She's a little bit shy, so and I am too, so I hope this gives her a little bit of strength.
So before you take over, how does it feel to write a book about two of your favorite things, swimming and dogs?
I was waking up at 3 in the morning to write. I was so excited because I'd lie in bed in the morning thinking about, what am I going to say next? How can I connect the story? How can I make sure that what I'm telling is the best way to tell it? So then I'd be really excited. I'd sit down at 3 in the morning, start writing till about 6 or 7, then go swimming in the bay, and then come back and edit, and then go back and continue writing. So it was a story of joy and about happiness. And I think it's sort of the time for us to hear those things. And it turned out that when I was writing this book, it was during the times we're all secluded. But I kept thinking, our lives are going by anyway. Might as well do something that's fulfilling and share that with other people. So that's what happened with the book.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to have you talk about the book, and I'll come back for a little bit, ask you a couple questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Will that work for you?
That looks great.
All right,
Thank you,
your
Michael.
water's right there.
Thank
Why don't
you.
you go ahead and stand here so we can get
Okay.
you on camera? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm seeing my past in all these different faces, from UC Santa Barbara to high school to friends that I've made through the years, and it's so special to be back here in Santa Barbara. You know, just really fantastic. It feels like I've come home again, and there aren't many places in the world where you can say that, but Santa Barbara feels like that. This book that I wrote was really about dreams, and so many of you here have had big dreams and pursued them. And so I started thinking about this when I saw this dog in a video leaping out of a helicopter into a lake in northern Italy. And I immediately thought, how do you train a Newfoundland or any other dog to go into a helicopter and get them to jump in? That's the puppy. She's
like to explain.
For once, that's not my dog.
Yeah, she's not my dog, but she's a special guest from her mom. Marion is with the Newfoundland Club of America, and so they've agreed to bring the puppy so all of you can meet her after the book signing. But the Newfoundland Club of America does something similar to what I found out that they did in England, in Italy. I wound up, you know, when you see something that's so astonishing, it piques your interest, and I decided I have to go to Italy to find out more. And I also love Italy, and I love Italian food, and I love swimming in the Italian lake, so it didn't take much to figure out that this would be a really cool thing to do. The problem was I just didn't know how to do it. How do you get a hold of the Italian Water Rescue Dog School in Milan? You know, you can see the clips, you can see the notes, but there's no address, and there wasn't any clarity on who to contact. So life is, for me, a bunch of contacts that you meet people and they network you, and then you're able to go to the next place. Years ago, I met a pilot named John Chalice, who was an F4 pilot who flew off Navy carriers and landed at night, and told me these crazy stories about how difficult it was and how they wore poopy suits, so that these suits were life jackets but also wetsuits, and they were able to squeeze their legs when they're in the pilot seat to make sure that when they're doing the different maneuvers they don't pass out. So we talked about his flying and all that, and he mentioned in passing he knew somebody at the U.S. Embassy in Rome. And so I asked him, could you please reach out to this person who is a naval attaché and see if he might know how to get a hold of this group in northern Italy. So within a few days, I heard back from the group. Donatella Pasquale was vice president of the school, and she contacted me and said, you're welcome to come and watch us train. So it was just incredible, because you know how many of you are athletes, or many of you have dogs that you work and train. There's this element about training that fascinates me. How do you train for a certain level and get to that level, and then how do you go beyond it? For me, it's been by going to other athletes and other people to learn from them to be able to get to that next level. So when I was training, for instance, to swim in Antarctica, I wound up calling my college roommate, Sandy Nelson, who got the gold medal in the 100 freestyle, and said, Sandy, I'm going to be swimming in 32-degree water in a swimsuit, cap, and goggles. How do I swim fast? All my life has been about swimming long distances, but not fast. So she said, well, you need to start doing a lot more weights, you need to do more reps, you need to do them quicker, and you need to do much more sprinting. And she said, and I bet when you hit the water, you're going to swim fast if it's 32 degrees. Because we used to go work out at UC Santa Barbara in the early morning, and the water was always cold when we first got in, and that always made us go faster. So what I was trying to figure out is, how do you get these normal dogs to train and become elite athletes? Because they really are. And it surprised me that the dogs were, from what I saw, weren't afraid of the loud noise of the helicopter. They weren't afraid of the wind on the ground, but also there's all sorts of water and spray that comes up from the rotor action onto the water. So how do you train the dogs to swim through the rough water? And how do you train the people? And more than any of that, are these dogs well treated, or are they forced to jump out of the helicopter into the water? So I thought, I just want to go and find out more. The day I arrived, Donatella picked me up in her sport utility vehicle. She opened the hatchback, and there was this huge crate in the back. She opened up the crate, and Al jumped out. And Al was it still is, a brown Newfoundland with yellow eyes. I'd never seen a brown Newfoundland in my life, so I was instantly intrigued. She told me that she had waited years to get this special dog, that she had come from Belgium, and that she had had her relative before. The relative she had had before was a dog named Alicia. And Alicia was one of the most famous water rescue dogs in Italy, but also around the world. She'd been covered on Japanese television, British television. She'd been featured in newspapers. She was on all sorts of papers around the world for being this elite water rescue dog. So Donatella had Alicia and decided to get Al and have Alicia start to train Al as a puppy. I thought that was astonishing that you would have one dog train the other. And Donatella thought it was a good idea, but Al didn't quite get it. So when they greeted me at the airport, it was obvious that Al was not one of the elite dogs, and that Donatella was really having a hard time controlling her. And being vice president of the school, and she had trained like so many dogs and people, and she was known sort of as the dog whisperer, but she couldn't get this dog to really mind her. And I thought, it's really a lot like being the coach's daughter or son, where you really want them. Coach Wilson's laughing because he understands. Exactly. So it was really hard for her to work with this dog. I was invited to go to Lake Idroscarlo in northern Milan where they do this testing, and it was so much fun because what they do is it's like like the lake is, imagine a pool, and here are the puppies in the shallow end, and here are the beginning swimmers here that are the Labradors and Newfoundlands and Golden Retrievers, Leonbergers, which are huge dogs that have been bred in Germany to become because they were mascots of the town in Germany. They were bred to look like lions because of Leonberg, Germany. But these large dogs are now used a lot in water rescue training, but they're also used as assistance dogs. So they were there as well, and then I found out about a new kind of dog that I'd never heard about before called the Italian Spinoni, which are really gun dogs. They're used for hunting in Italy, but apparently they started to show great promise as being water rescue dogs. A while ago, somebody asked me, well, if you go to a beach in Italy and there are already lifeguards, why the heck do you need dogs on the beach? Isn't it better to have the dogs away? Well, I found out from Donatella that a Newfoundland can pull in 6 people at a time. A Labrador can pull in 2 people. A Golden can pull in 2 or 3 people. And the other dogs can usually pull in 2 or 1. Plus, the dog has the owner who's also trained as a lifeguard, who's also training and keeping up their skill level, but also their endurance level, so that they will also go along on the rescue to help people. So the man who started this school was a man named Ferruccio Palenga. And he had this idea because years ago, his daughter and her friend were in the water and suddenly got pulled out by a current. And their Newfoundland just immediately went in and rescued them and pulled them to shore. So Ferruccio got this idea that maybe these dogs could be used as rescue dogs. So he began to develop this idea, but he took it really far. Instead of just saying, we're going to work with the dogs, he decided what he would do is train them so that if you were in the water and you were thrashing and you're trying to get help, the dog would not just come right over to you. And so I didn't know any of this. I was just told, okay, you can get in the water now. And Mass is a star Newfoundland. She's this big, black, 130, 140-pound Newfoundland. And when you start thrashing, I'll let her go and she'll come out to you. So I swam about 50 meters offshore. Ferruccio let the dog go. And she just came in a huge circle around me. And as she was circling, she kept watching me as she went around. And then she came around again much closer and let me grab onto this handhold on top of her harness. And the harness had buoyancy in it, so it immediately lifted me up. And so I thought, it's going to be hard for this dog to pull me in because I'm not a little person. but I was already buoyant, and she was so strong. It was just like, it was like being on the Iditarod. It was just like, just going to shore. It was so much fun. So we get to shore within 30 seconds, you know, because she's got these massive paws that are all webbed. And the dogs were bred to be dogs that were in the water. They came from mostly Spain, but also Europe, on board fishing ships in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century. And then these dogs were bred in Newfoundland to become dogs that worked to pull the lines in for the fishermen in around Newfoundland and along the Great Banks. So a lot of people like Newfoundlands, but they don't really like it that when they're like walking around, they just start drooling. And so the reason for their loose lips is because they would hold on to the line, fishing lines, or the ropes that they're pulling in with their mouths, and they needed to be able to breathe. So that's why they have, so when you go to Italy and you're around the people that are training the dogs sometimes have little bibs on. Or if you have a handkerchief and you see my dog over here is drooling, you'll take your handkerchief and wipe the dog's face. So there's this community like of swim team people, of friends together, and you see this as you go through this whole program. But anyway, I reached shore, it was great. I asked Donatella and Ferruccio, can I go out again? And can I go off further? And can we try this just to see what Mas does? So they said, sure. So I swam 100 meters offshore, and I started lifting my arms. And at that point, Mas swam out again. It seemed faster. And this time she didn't do a wide circle because she already knew me. She swam right in close to me, and I held on to the harness. So as we started to come back to shore, I intentionally let go. And she immediately felt the lack of resistance. She circled around me again and gave me the handle, and I held on to it. And we got within 25 meters ashore, and again, I let go again. And she circled me closer this time and looked at me like, are you dumb? Just like, you should be hanging on here. Don't you get it? So she pulled me to shore, and it was just like, okay, I get it. Then the thing that we wound up doing is watching how they started working with the puppies. That was I was curious, like, are they supporting the puppies? Are they throwing the puppies into the water? How are they teaching the dogs to swim? And so in this story, I talk about Al and the school, but I also talk a lot about water and swimming and training and water safety for kids and adults and dogs. So that's incorporated. So it's not just a story about Al. You sort of have to look beyond the cover to see what's going on. So what I saw when they were working, the owners would work with their puppies. They would hold the dogs and let their paws start to coordinate. And then I might swap my dog with you, Greg, and you give me your dog. And then we would trade off dogs, and the dogs would get used to working with different people right from the start. They would also get used to rescuing different people. So they learned that they weren't always going over to Mary to get Mary out of the water. They were able to figure out that they needed to go to different people to be rescued. One of the key things in this whole thing was that when I met Donatella, Al was 2 years old, and she was not reaching any of the standards that Donatella had hoped. She was at 2 years old. Donatella thought she would be out there as one of these elite dogs. And she at one point had Mass trying to teach Al to do these training and wasn't getting it all. So I happened to be there at a time where Donatella was going to go with the Italian Coast Guard to do a number of water tests. So there's this huge buildup because Donatella is really worried because this water test dictates whether or not the dog, Al, and she are going to be able to go on patrol with the Italian Coast Guard, because this group volunteers their time to be on board the Coast Guard boats to patrol the coast of Italy and also the lakes, but also they go into Germany and Switzerland to help there as well. So if Al passed this test, she would be permitted to join the Italian Coast Guard. And if she didn't pass the test, it might be another year or two for her to be able to achieve this goal. I'm not going to tell you what happened. But I am going to tell you that there were things about this whole journey that were so much fun. I mean, if you love swimming and suddenly now you're in an Italian lake in northern Italy, and the water is between 75 and 85 degrees. It's like, it doesn't get much better than that, just to be able to swim. But then to have these amazing dogs and their owners. The other thing that we did is we had this amazing Italian meal, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 courses. So, you know how you go to a swim meet or a triathlon meet, or you do different stuff, and at the end, you get together with your friends, and you debrief, and you learn from each other. So this was my time with Donatella, Roberto, and Ferruccio to sit down with them at a big dinner with the dogs under the table, taking up half the floor space of this restaurant, and to talk to them about how they train the dogs and what they do and what they don't do. And a lot of my questions about how they treat the dogs were answered. They explained that they would never force a dog into a helicopter or out of a helicopter. They would, if a dog didn't want to do something, the dog didn't do it. And recently, because of being involved with this group in Italy, I've met a lot of people from the Newfoundland Club of America and found out they're also doing these water tests and getting to a point where they can do water rescues. And so I was talking to a woman the other day who's working with her 6-month-old, because somebody had asked me, how long does it take these dogs to be trained enough to be able to do this? And this woman told me it really depends on the dog. She said it's just like a person. Some people will get the skill faster than others. She said that she has a 6-month-old that she can throw in a line into the water, and the dog will immediately go in there and just pull it back. And she says she has a 10-year-old female who has not wanted to do any of that for years. But recently, for some reason, she just decided she wanted to go in and get the line. So now she's going on to do something more. So that was what was also surprising. It's really about the skill levels dependent on the dog, and it's also dependent on the instructor. And if somebody isn't able to teach a certain dog, then you trade the dog off to somebody else. There's a real sense of community, of family, of the reason I really, really wanted to write about this group was that they spend so much time, like from spring into fall every year, working with the dogs, building these amazing connections between the dogs, their own dogs, and the other dogs and the people. And then they volunteer their time for hours. I mean, and what I found out last year was that in July, there were 14 kids on rubber inflatable rafts that had been pulled out by a current. 2 Labradors and their owners saw what was happening, and they went out and pulled in all the kids. This is like an unusual event, but they usually rescue 10, 12, 20 people a year, but a lot of their work is about preventative work. So I wrote about that, I wrote about swimming, I wrote about the love of swimming, and the love of Italian food, and just about this tight community that I had suddenly, like you're pulling somebody onto your team that you've never met before, and suddenly you're welcomed. Sort of like this group today, just here you are, and all together. So I really wanted to share this story, and it was a story that was really hopeful, happy. It's about courage. It's about learning how to swim. And in my case, I used dogs to help teach little kids to swim that had had horrible experiences. And so that's the story pretty much in general. So if you want
A couple questions.
couple questions, Mike. Michael.
I really love when you read the book, you'll see how she incorporates aspects of her own life and interweaves with the current story about Al and everything. It's a wonderful way to put it. And I was wondering how you were able to put yourself in there, but not make it about you, and you made it about something larger than yourself.
Well, it was easy because they were so interesting.
Yeah.
That I really admire people that put themselves in a position to rescue other people, that they put themselves in harm's way to help other people. And so here they are spending like a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, just so that people can go to the beach and have a good time and know they'll be safe. It was, and I think so many people here today are probably lifeguards, have been lifeguards, or they understand that whole thing. But also it was really fun to be like on the boat with the Italian Coast Guard cruising the coast of Italy. Like, this is cool. I can do this.
New career, perhaps? But you really do have a gift for doing that. Tell me the personal stuff.
Thank you.
You know, there are a few things, you know, I hope I'm not giving anything away by saying that tennis balls aren't a thing with dogs.
Oh, yeah, that's that's a good prompt,
Do
thank you.
you mind
No,
telling a little
no,
bit about
no,
that?
no.
I found that very interesting.
So there was a man named Roberto who had a beautiful golden retriever, and she was the sweetest dog. And so Roberto was one of the men that I met at this camp, basically. And I asked him, I said, well, when you're done with the training, do you get to throw tennis balls and your dog swims out and gets it and is really happy because now it gets to play? And he said, no, I don't use toys. None of us use toys. We have to be more entertaining, more enthusiastic than tennis ball, so that the dogs will then pay attention to us, and that will be our bond and our connection. So that was his mantra, being more exciting than tennis ball. Yeah.
You know, I also like is your empathic view
Yeah.
throughout, and you use some of your own experience of teaching difficulties teaching children to swim, or even teaching dogs to swim. So being equipped with this going into the story, were you surprised at all with anything that happened out there in Italy?
I was surprised by the whole thing because I didn't really know what to expect. You know, all I saw was the video image. You can go and look online of Italian water rescue dogs, and you can see this mammoth Newfoundland jumping out of a red helicopter into the water. And so, you know, the idea, I mean, they're jumping from about that height, and so they're going to hit hard, they're going to go underwater. So being a swimmer, you think, okay, the dog's going to hit hard, it's going to hurt some, and what happens if they hit wrong, and how do they hold their breath? How do they know how to do that? So is that part of the training, or do they gulp a bunch of water? So I was into the mechanics of it all, and it was just amazing to see the dogs. Some of them really instinctively got it, but there were a lot of dogs that had to learn to swim, and that was what also surprised me, that most people think you can take a dog or a kid and throw the kid or the dog in the water and swim, but it's not the way it's done.
I think it really helped that you had experience, like when you're jumping off a 10-meter, you know, at Belmont, 10-meter platform dive at Belmont.
Yes.
That probably put that thought in your head.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So does anybody have any questions for Lynne? This would be a great time. Please feel free about swimming, Al, anything. Newfoundlands?
What's your next big swim?
What's my next big swim? My next big swim is this book tour.
Oh.
Really, I mean, I'm going to try to swim in pools along the way, but I'm going to San Francisco, the Bay Area, Santa Cruz, Folsom, Reno. Then I go to the East Coast and go to Boston or Berkshires and New Hampshire and East Hampton, Virginia. I'm going to Annapolis and Annapolis, Maryland, and Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, Florida, then to the Great Lakes area, to Chicago, St. Paul, St. Louis, and Kansas City, and then the Pacific Northwest to Elliott Bay Books in Seattle, and then also Lake Chelan, where I've never been in my life, but it's supposed to be the most beautiful lake. Chelan, thank you. So going to Lake Chelan, and then coming back, and then have stuff in San Diego, and then the Long Beach. So, and then go to Europe after that. So this is going to be pretty much through August.
Hey,
Yeah.
Lynn, maybe for,
Just
just as an idea, I don't think a lot of people know about South End or Dolphin Club, maybe just give
Oh.
a brief overview to, so
No,
that-
that's
I mean,
great.
that's kind of your home, right?
Right, sorry. So when I said the Bay Area, I really meant the South End Rowing Club and the Dolphin Club, which are right below Ghirardelli Square. So I'll be at the South End on June 4th, and on June 5th, I'll be at the Dolphin Club, and then the afternoon at Book Passage at Coda Madeira. So if you look online, and just go to lynnecox.com, and you'll see stage 1, 2, 3, 4 of the tour. We haven't put stage 5 in yet. But if you want to tell your friends or whatever, it'd be really great to meet them along the way.
So get the word out, everyone, please.
Yeah. Well, you did great. Look at all you
No, I have to
today.
thank a lot of the master swimmers like Ellen Wall and Jan Majority. Thank you for I enlisted them to get the word out.
They
really
did
helped.
great. Yeah.
So I just have a quick thing that I want you to do, just very briefly, if you can. Talk about the whale and the book, because that book, if anybody can get a book along with this one, is get
Okay.
that book.
Okay, that's, so that was, my first book was Swimming to Antarctica, and a lot of people who read Swimming to Antarctica, and I have copies of it here, but a lot of people that read Swimming to Antarctica didn't know that I'd written a second book called Grayson. And it's a story about a baby gray whale who got lost off the coast of Seal Beach while I was training to swim the Catalina Channel. And it's a story about this fisherman on board on the Seal Beach pier who told me that the baby whale was lost, that I needed to stay out in the water with him to help him find his mom. So being 17 years old at the time, I just thought, okay, I'm not sure how to do that, but I will stay with him. So this story becomes a connecting point between the lifeguards from Long Beach who come down, the fishermen who come, the people on the pier, and I wound up staying with this great baby gray whale who connects with me and then leaves me and then comes back to me, and we stay out in the water off Seal Beach for about 5 hours. The book has become so popular, it's been translated into 23 languages. It was also translated to British English, and was translated to British English. They had to take away the enthusiasm from a few sentences so that the British would not be upset by that. So, and the other thing I'd like to tell you is Chris Carter's here today. Chris is my really, really good friend. He's a triathlete and a swimmer. And he is responsible for creating and writing the X-Files. He has written a script about my life that we are now shopping to get made into a film. And so this is our first announcement of the public.
Go for it, Chris. Go for it.
So who would play with you?
I don't know, Chris is the
Good
expert.
question.
Yeah.
Take any suggestions.
I think Lynne could do it.
No.
Are there any other questions before we begin to sign books? Well, thank you all for coming, and Lynn, thank you very much. So we're going to line up right down the middle here. We'll get you that chair. Oh, where's the... Do you want to bring her in?
So if you want to meet the Newfoundland, she's outside. Good hearing.
You just have to grab the
Oh, you could find it now.
There's a chair up here. There's a chair right there.
Thank you, Mike.
He does stuff like that too for smart.
Watch out.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw her. She's inside on the most.